Okay, we're going to move to the Arabian Peninsula next, and I'm going to hand over to Suaad Al Harthi, who is the Executive Director of the Environment Society of Oman, and she's going to talk about one of the most important, if not the most important, wetland sites in the Arabian Peninsula. That's Barr Al Hikman in Oman. So over to you, Suaad. Really looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you for the introduction, Rob. I will just put my presentation on presentation mode, I suppose. So thank you everyone for being here today to listen to the various talks from the region. My name is Suaad Al Harthi and I work for the Environment Society of Oman. The presentation will be on Barr Al Hikman, wetland jewel of the Arabian Peninsula. So to start, it's important for me to share information on the organization that I work for. The Environment Society of Oman was established in 2004 as the first and still only environmental NGO operating in the Sultanate of Oman, with a vision to help protect and conserve Oman's natural heritage. And we aim to do this by influencing environmentally sustainable behavior through education, awareness, as well as conservation research. We have various programs and activities. Given that we are a nonprofit organization, one of the main activities, of course, is fundraising for the various programs and activities. We also work towards building the capacity of Omanis in the field of scientific research and data collection, environmental awareness. We have education programs. We also work on community outreach and awareness and various research and conservation programs. In terms of outreach and awareness, we have, it's usually the scientific research which then translates into our conservation messages, and we reach out to various members of society, whether it's children, women's association, farmers, fishermen. We've had several beach as well as underwater cleanups, and most notably over the last 3 years, we've managed to clear out about 600 tons of abandoned fishing nets off of prime nesting beaches on Masira Island. We have education programs that cater to both school-age children as well as college and university level. Of course, in 2020, many of these programs were suspended due to the health pandemic, but hopefully, if things look brighter in 2021, we will hopefully resume some of these education programs. In terms of research and conservation, we've got programs both on the terrestrial side of things as well as on the marine side. And I'll just quickly highlight some of these before we move on to Barr Al Hikman. So in the southern part of Oman, we have been studying the frankincense tree, otherwise known as Liban, which has significant value, both heritage and culture value, as well as medicinal use. It's considered to be near threatened, and ESO has been studying how to sustainably harvest the tree and sharing this information with frankincense landowners and farmers, as well as promoting information on how do you safely grow and take care of frankincense seedlings. The Arabian Sea humpback whale is considered to be a unique subpopulation that is considered to be endangered. And we have close to 20 years of research on the Arabian Sea humpback whales. Various studies include satellite tagging of the Arabian Sea humpback whales and various publications. We also have been studying the loggerhead sea turtles, particularly on the island of Masira. And the studies have shown that over the last 20-year period, there's been a decline in about approximately 70% decline in the nesting population. And this has led to this unique subpopulation being considered to be critically endangered. We've also been studying raptors, and Dr. Mike McGrady is on the call as well. He's been helping us to understand more on the Egyptian vulture populations. Research has been conducted since 2012, and through collaboration with the International Avian Research Center and Bern Mayberg Foundation, we've been able to study and tag Egyptian vultures and steppe eagles since 2015. And there's a blog, there's a link shown at the bottom there if people would like to find out more. Now, coming to Barr Al Hikman, I thought we would zoom out and have a look at the region, see where Oman is on the map. And you can see that Barr Al Hikman is located off of the eastern coast of Oman. The region is called Al Wusta, so it's in the Al Wusta region of Oman. Zooming in a little bit more, you've got the Gulf of Masira, which is the Gulf just below the peninsula of Barr Al Hikman, and you have the island of Masira right next to it, which is where I've mentioned you have these loggerhead sea turtles nesting there. And so the Barr Al Hikman peninsula is adjacent to the Arabian Sea, and this area is influenced by dust storms that come in from East Africa, as well as the Tigris and Euphrates. And then in addition to that, you have the southwest monsoon, which brings in cold, nutrient-rich waters that upwell to the surface, leading to very high levels of primary productivity in the area, which then leads to secondary and tertiary productivity. And because of this productivity levels, you have an abundance of krill and fish, which is abundant food for the various whales and dolphins as well that are found off the coast of Oman. And particularly you have the Arabian Sea humpback whale, which I mentioned earlier. This is the only population of humpback whale that is considered to be non-migratory. So it's found to be feeding as well as breeding in this region. And it has two main hotspot areas that have been identified off the coast of Oman, one of which is the Gulf of Masira, and the second of which is further south along the Dhofari coast. The area also has frequent sightings of the endangered Indian Ocean humpback dolphin. And more broadly, there are around 13 different species of whales and dolphins that have been sighted along the Gulf of Masira area. There are also 4 different species of sea turtles that are known to nest on the coast of Oman. And so there's the loggerhead sea turtles, the green sea turtles, hawksbill turtles, as well as olive ridley sea turtles. And both the loggerhead turtles as well as the hawksbill turtles are considered to be critically endangered. So I thought to share some of the images or maps showing some of the satellite tracking data for these 2 species, showing their use of the areas, particularly the areas surrounding Barr Al Hikman for foraging. And the hawksbills as well as olive ridleys have been shown to have very high sight fidelity when it comes to their foraging, remaining in these particular reefs off the coast of Barr Al Hikman for their foraging. Now, going in a little bit closer, there are 3 main mudflat areas that surround Barr Al Hikman. You have the Ghubat Hashish area, which has this shallow bay with a little island in the middle known as Mahout Island. And there's a pretty well-established mangrove area there. There are some seagrass meadows there and intertidal mudflats, which are used by shorebirds. And then as we move further south, you have the Khor Al Milh area, which has 2 lagoons. And as you move into the coastal waters, you've got coral reefs there. And there is one of the most well-known monospecific coral stand existing here. So quite rare, you will find a coral reef that has only 1 species. And in this area, you have kilometers of a single species of coral known as Montipora. And then as you move towards the fringing reefs, the diversity tends to increase and you have around 30 different species of corals in those areas. And then as we look to the east coast, you have the Khor Barr Al Hikman area, which also has seagrass of varying densities, starting from sparse density to high density, as well as intertidal mudflats. So looking at what these ecosystems look like on the intertidal areas, you've got the sabkha, which is the mud flat or salt flat areas, as well as some of the algal communities. Then you have the intertidal mud flats, which are influenced by a mixed semidiurnal tide, which means that you've got 2 high tides and 2 low tides of varying heights. And then you have the coastal dunes, which then leads to the offshore waters. And although these are different ecosystems, they are certainly linked at various levels, both at the local scale, for example, when it comes to shorebirds that use the mud flats for their feeding and then move on to the sabkha areas for their roosting, and you have sea turtles that are foraging in the coastal areas and then migrating to other parts of the world. So it's important that these various scales of ecosystem linkages are understood to understand how they might be impacted when some components are undermined. So there have been various surveys on shorebirds in this area. There were some systematic surveys that were conducted in the 90s, and then 3 winter surveys that had been carried out between 2008 and 2016 by various scientists that are associated with the Royal Netherlands Institute for Sea Research. And a couple of the scientists are here on the call today, including Ward and Roland Baum. And the results of these surveys showed that 500,000 waterbirds utilize the Barr Al Hikman area, comprising of about 42 species that had been identified. The shorebirds were considered to be the most numerous group, around 410,000 shorebirds, consisting of 23 different species. And in addition to that, for 18 species of shorebirds, the population wintering at Barr Al Hikman exceeded more than 1% of their flyway population. This is usually the threshold that's used for Ramsar site designation. So this area is considered to be the most important wintering grounds for shorebirds in the Middle East and the Asian East African flyway, both in terms of the number of birds as well as the species diversity. The tagging and ringing studies have shown that birds that are utilizing Barr Al Hikman area are coming all the way from the north in Scandinavia, spanning across to the central Siberia and all the way to eastern Siberia. And some of these birds are utilizing Barr Al Hikman for their wintering, and some of them are actually using Barr Al Hikman as a stopover ground to kind of replenish their reserves and then move further south towards the east coast of Africa. The research also showed that the shorebirds have tripled in numbers when compared to the 90s, and it's not yet well understood what the reasons for this increase in numbers is. It could potentially be that a situation in the flyway has improved. It could also be that other wetland areas in the region might be a little bit compromised in terms of various types of coastal development that's been taking place in the region, and so it might be a redistribution of the birds. But the mudflat areas as well as the sabkha areas are all considered to be important in the Barr Al Hikman area, both for the feeding as well as the roosting. And it's estimated that every year at least 1 million migratory shorebirds use the Barr Al Hikman area. So I thought it would be lovely to share a few of the photos of the different water birds. So you have the larger birds such as flamingos that are kind of filter feeding in the area. You've got about 20 different species of fish-eating water birds, including egrets, herons, cormorants, terns, and gulls. And then you have the shorebirds, including Eurasian oystercatcher, the Kentish plover, the ruddy turnstone, and common redshank. And I have to thank Wahid Fazari for sharing these lovely photos. And then in terms of the benthic community, there are approximately 100 species of gastropods, bivalves, and crabs that have been identified in this area, which of course are important to the shorebirds. And it's quite common to see like burrowing crabs that turn over the sand, and then you have these little balls of sand that that are seen on the surface, like on the photo on the right. The surrounding waters also are considered to provide an important nursery ground, especially the seagrass meadows, important nursery ground for various commercially important fish species. And, you know, there are also important shrimp habitats here. There are important fisheries for blue swimming crabs. And you have some traditional fishing still taking place in the area, as well as a little bit larger scale fishing with the use of dhows. The area in general is not really, I would say, you know, very well utilized or highly populated. There is, you know, in addition to fisheries, some recreational activities taking place on the peninsula, particularly popular among campers and kite surfers. So as a general overview, this area is considered to have both local, regional, as well as international significance, considering it the most important wintering site for birds in the Middle East. It has important habitats, both mangroves, coral reefs, seagrass meadows, mudflats, subclass, as well as algal communities. You have 500,000 shorebirds that utilize this area, comprising of 42 species. It has important feeding and breeding areas for marine life, including whales, dolphins, and sea turtles. It is host to important nursery ground for commercially important fish and crab species. And these various ecosystems are interconnected by nutrient flows, which can potentially be vulnerable to various uses and impacts in the area. The Barr Al Hikman area is considered to be a protected area. It's under Omani royal decree. It has also been identified by the IUCN as an important marine mammal area. There are 4 important marine mammal areas in Oman, and the Gulf of Masira area is considered to be one of them. Under the Convention of Migratory Species, the area is also considered to be ecologically and biologically significant, what's known as an EBSA area. And you know, the research that's been conducted by the Royal Netherlands Institute for Research has shown that this area is deserving of becoming a Ramsar site, and there is a proposal for it to be listed as a wetland of international significance. So it's important, I guess, as Oman looks towards diversifying its economy and looking at moving towards various types of developments, whether it is expanding the tourism industry, increasing fisheries, increasing aquaculture developments, refineries, all of these different activities have the potential to threaten important marine ecosystems, marine and coastal ecosystems. And it's important that the integrity of the ecosystem links is maintained for any future developments in this area. And as the Environment Society of Oman, although we are not the ones conducting the primary research in this area, we do see that it's important for us to advocate for conservation of this area, which is not only something that is important locally, it's important internationally. And we also find it important, of course, to raise awareness and spread the information on the importance of this area, and also encourage building of capacity of Omanis to conduct further research. Yes, certainly there's a lot of information that has been generated, and we do have some level of understanding of this pristine wetland area, but there's still so much more research that needs to be conducted. And certainly the development of Omanis conducting research in this area would add value and help with the conservation and protection of this area. I should highlight and thank all of the different authors that have contributed to research in this area. These are some of the references that I've used to put the presentation together. Thanks to OSME and all of you for being here and listening to the talk on Barr Al Hikman.
Thank you very much, Suaad. That was absolutely superb. What an amazing place Barr Al Hikman looks. I think your title of the wetland jewel is certainly very appropriate. Again, we're kind of slightly over time, but I am keen that we do take one question. So I'll let Nick choose a question from the chat box, and Suaad, if you get a chance to answer some of the other questions in the chat box, that would be great. So Nick, do you want to choose a question?
I will take the very first one that came in, which is from Mike McGrady, which is he's wondering what the status is of the proposed shrimp farms off the Barr Al Hikman.
Excellent question, Mike. So it is still proposed to go forward. It is not yet officially approved, and I understand that the aquaculture developers are in the process of putting together an environmental impact assessment that will need to be reviewed by the Environment Authority and meet their approval before it goes forward. So there's certainly still uncertainty on whether the project will go forward or not. And with the support of various local as well as international experts, we will do our best to try to encourage alternative site selection or ensure that appropriate mitigation measures are in place if the project goes forward.
Great, thank you. Oh, go on, Rob.
Thank you, Suaad, for that answer.
Thank you, everyone. And I'll try to answer the questions in the chat box.
That's great.